So then we're getting into mapping that, so the business problem into a business objective. Then we need to work with you, but it's great if you have a go at this up front, is mapping that out into an overall aim and supporting objectives. And one of the tips that I like to do with this when I'm working with clients is to say, okay, what are the decisions you're going to make at the end of the research? Because I can work out because then it's my job to work out what evidence will you need to decide A versus B. And that's a really good way to get to these objectives, really good start point to get to these objectives. And one of the questions I ask when I'm testing a brief. So at the core of a good research lies its aim and objectives, because once we settle on aim and objectives, then we don't vary from that. We try to stick to that. That's our blueprint for undertaking the research. So a good brief will contain this, and a good agency will pressure test this. So I think that's where you've got to expect for the agency to be able to really enhance that translation of business problem, business objective into research aims and research objectives. And I would suggest, if your agency's not doing that, then get another agency. The starting point of research is that using that decision-focused approach, as I mentioned, just ponder the decisions you're going to have to make at the end of this research. It's a really easy way of reframing what the objectives are. The clearer these decisions are, the better aligned your research objectives will be. It's great to even include that in your brief document, that these are the decisions that we'll make at the end. These are the anticipated outcomes. Then crafting that into effective objectives, distill these decisions in a tangible, actionable research as follows. So what we want to do is we want to start with an overall aim. I like to think of it as aim and objectives, defining the overarching purpose of the main goal of the research. The primary objectives is the umbrella, which all of those other supporting objectives should be laddering up to and supporting. And I'll give you an example of that in a minute. Then you get into the supporting objectives that dive into the specific areas, questions or facets that need answering to achieve that overall overarching research aim. And that's what we end up translating into lines of inquiry, whether we will make decisions around, well, that's an exploratory objective, so therefore we'll do qualitative and then we'll do quantitative. Or that's a sizing question, so we will do that with quantitative. But we will always be coming back to these aims and objectives, and we're delivering our report. We'll be looking at these to make sure that we've answered all those. When we write our questionnaires, our topics guides, we'll be making sure that we're laser focused on these areas. So this is where, if we don't have these down and we don't agree on these things, and again, as I said, we would always do an immersion workshop after the brief to make sure that after we've had some time after our proposal that we've all landed and are aligned specifically on the way forward, because we're not going to vary from that unless we find something in the research in an early stage that requires us to take a turn. Then we would communicate that. But this is our blueprint, and it stops us from wasting time finding things that are nice to know that don't answer and don't ladder up to answering the business decision. So once this is all written, before we start again, I would say let's revisit those decisions. Come back to those decisions that may have evolved and define the decisions that emerge from your research results. And just keep repeating that process, until you feel like you've landed on a set of objectives. So I'm going to give because we probably don't have time to go on a really complex, and we're going to give a really simple but practical example of advertising tests. And so giving an instance where we might have 3 commercial ideas for an assessment. So the agencies, we often get asked to do this. We've got 3 executions of an ad. We might have been involved in creating those territories and finding those salient messages or not. But in this case, the overarching aim is to determine the most effective advertising concept for the production. That's the business problem. We want this ad. We've got to decide which one we're going to actually pay good money for to be produced and executed. We need to find out which one is the best, the most effective, resonates, etc. So that's our overarching arm. And then we would have some supporting objectives to meet the same. What would we need to know in order to support that overall aim? So this might be which TV ideas are most likable by those in the target market. Those of you working on in advertising land will know that likability is a really strong metric of future success of an ad. So that would be a key metric. Which ad has the best linkage to our brand? Which ad says that the people can easily identify as our brand? Which has the best fit with our brand? Is it a stretch? Does it actually fit with our brand? Not only does the execution show our brand, give that mental availability, but which of those actually has that best fit and is believable. So we might have messages around that. What messages are being processed spontaneously by viewers of each TV idea? Are these positive? Are they negative? What's the cognition that's going on? So all these things are layering up to this, what's the most effective ad concept? Then might look at the messaging itself and say, which of these messages are consistent with the intended messaging of the TV idea? So what are we trying to communicate? And when we show it to respondents, which of these ads does that best job of creating those intended messages and for consumers to play those back? Which TV ad has the less wear out over repeated exposures? Which TV idea has the greatest lift in propensity to consider or buy our brand? So these might not be, this is not an exhaustive list, but just to show you an idea of, here's a really simple thing, which ad should we choose? And the overarm is to choose the best ad or the most effective ad. But there's a number of different supporting ideas, pieces of information that we would need to know and gather data on in order for us to answer that brief. So what I would say here again is just definitely have a go at doing an overarching aim, supporting objectives by using those techniques I talked about. So, what's the business problem? What are we trying to solve? What are the decisions? And those things should be pretty easy, because that's kind of like what's keeping you awake at night in the first place. But then expect your agency to guide you with those initial objectives after that first discussion with the brief. Anticipate we wanted to still refine and bring our expertise into refining those objectives, because that's our job effectively, is turning that into research objectives.